Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and the 1.1 test server just went live today, and spoilers, this is possibly the biggest chunk of content that Wargaming have added into their game in absolutely ages. And I say content rather than just cosmetic or game features. Today's video is going to give you an overview of everything to look forward to with this huge content patch, and in the upcoming days and weeks on this channel, I'll flesh out the overview into individual videos on each one of the aspects. So without further ado, let's see what we got to look forward to with update 1.1. Immediately, personal missions. This is what Wargaming are leading with their next update. And it's about time too. It was January 2015 since the first campaign of personal missions were released in the game, and I guess 3 years since I unlocked the Object 260 myself, and so I'm about ready to sink my teeth into some more missions. Now things have changed a little bit here. There are no longer going to be able to unlock 4 tanks, there are going to be 3, and the vehicles that you have to look forward to are the Excalibur, a tier 6 British reward tank destroyer, the Chimera, a tier 8 British medium reward tank, and finally one that a lot of people are super hyped about, the Object 279E, and yeah, it doesn't really look like it has a lower plate, as it's actually got 4 tracks. More on that later. So to be able to unlock each of these vehicles, you're going to have to complete each operation, the first, the second, and the third. Now the first operation is apparently all about persistence. Now what does persistence mean in World of Tanks? Well, it apparently means that you have to, for example, deal a lot of damage to your enemies, deal a lot of damage to medium tanks, destroy 20 enemy vehicles, all the way ranging down to here where you have to destroy 5 enemy self-propelled guns or be among the top 3 players on both teams by damage caused 10 times. Now that's very different to the first campaign, right? In the first campaign, frankly, you could kind of just get lucky in one of your battles, and then once you've done that about 45 to 60 times, you'd unlock a tank. Sounds like this is going to take upwards of 20 to 50 battles, depending on your skill level, to be able to complete each of the conditions. Now, like the first set of missions, you're going to have to do this 4 times, although now it's not based on tank type. It's actually nation-based. There are 4 different groups of nations. Firstly, the Union, which is going to be Soviets and China. The Bloc, which is Germany and Japan. The Alliance, which is America, the UK and Poland. And the Coalition, which is France, Sweden, Czechoslovakia and Italy. And so what's really interesting about this is it's no longer enough to be able to be just really good in your Bat Chatillon 25T and then you'll be able to waltz through all of those medium tank missions. Now you're going to have to play different nations of vehicles, and quite often different tank types even within them. Some of these missions require you to play self-propelled guns, of which there aren't really that many in the game. Well, at least nation-wise. And so I guess the benefit for this is if you really hate medium tanks, but you like heavy tanks spread out across all of the different nations, then you're going to be able to use more heavies. Although the problem is that if you were the kind of player who just absolutely loved playing medium tanks all of down a specific nation, well, you're probably going to have to get grinding and unlock some more nations if you want to be able to achieve these reward vehicles in the next campaign. Alright, so the second operation is apparently all about skill in one battle, similar to the first campaign. So let's take a look to see what we've got to look forward to. Destroy the tracks of 3 different enemy vehicles and cause 5 armor-penetrating shots to immobilized enemy vehicles. Okay, not too bad there. Let's just take another one here. Cause 10 armor-piercing shots to enemy vehicles that are the same tier or higher. Ooh, could be tricky unless you've got obviously a high rate of fire, lower alpha damage gun. And let's take a look to see what the real hard ones are. Cause 3,000 damage to enemy tank destroyers. Or cause 8,000 damage to enemy vehicles. Wow, that is a big game for any medium tank, even a tank destroyer. That's going to be a tricky one to get at tier 10. And interestingly enough, I guess if you want to get the Object 279E, then apparently you are going to have to show consistently good results over several battles. So for example, this one requires you to deal 3,500 hit points of damage to enemy vehicles 3 battles in a row, while this one requires you to deal damage to 4 enemy vehicles in 3 battles in a row. While the Coalition 14 King of the Hill mission requires you in 3 out of 5 battles to be the top player on both teams by damage dealt, which is truly a challenge that you're going to have to focus on if you want to get through. Now, another word of advice, you're going to be able to use, I think, tier 6 to tier 10 tanks for the first objective, tier 7 to tier 10 tanks for the second objective, and tier 8 to tier 10 tanks for the third. And so keep that in mind depending on which one of these vehicles you're looking to pick up. Now, I've actually previewed the first two vehicles on this channel already, so let's just take a quick look at the Object 279. Okay, 170 millimeters of hull armor. What are we talking about on the turret here? Turret armor 300 millimeters at the front, not bad. What kind of a gun is this packing? 440 alpha. Pretty good rate of fire, not the best. I know that the 113, for example, fires 6 rounds a minute, so it doesn't have the gun depression of the 111 5A. Not looking like it's the best of guns, but maybe it's the armor of the tank that are going to be incredible. And let's take a look at the mobility. Okay, pretty fast, top speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour. It kind of looks to me like it's going to play out a bit like a 113 meets an IS-4, but of course we're just going to have to see what happens when you can't penetrate this tank in the lower plate. And if the tank's GG armor model is anything to go by, this is looking like an absolute freak of a tank. Just no lower plate whatsoever, and an upper hull armor of 250 plus, depending on if the tank's using any of its gun depression. We're just going to have to wait and see what this thing is capable of. As with the previous set of missions as well, you will be getting rewards as you go along. For example, to be able to complete the first mission of the Union, you'll get 100,000 credits if you manage to complete those objectives, and an additional 50,000 if you do the battle with honors. And so we might be picking up, 150,000 credits in those 20 games as well, which is a nice little boost, especially for somebody who doesn't want to use a premium account. The later on rewards do get far more valuable. For example, free experience, 1,500 free experience for completing Union Mission 12, which would be very, very useful indeed. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, female crew members are back. And so if, like me, you very much regret wasting all of your female crew members, putting them all in a specific tank, because back then Sisterhood of Steel did not work with Brothers in Arms, which it now does, you could just use female crew members as commanders. And so I guess there's going to be 12 new female crew members up for grabs if you manage to complete all the missions. That's a very nice bonus. So now with personal missions covered, you might be wondering what else is going to be coming in 1.1. And the good news is there are going to be 2 new maps. The first one, a Polish map, which is Studzianki, I believe. I'm probably pronouncing that terribly. Now this map, I kind of featured it on the channel a few months ago. You remember in one of the videos that I produced when I came back from Minsk in February. But this Polish map, it kind of feels a bit like a Malinovka meets a Prokhorovka. Stay tuned to the channel for obviously fleshing out this. And I do feel like it's a map that looks like a lot of different tank types are going to have opportunities, unlike the city map that Wargaming were kind of releasing in the previous cycle. In addition to this, Wargaming are releasing the Minsk map, which is apparently topographically correct, where they've got all the buildings in the correct place. We've got the Ferris wheel, I'm wondering, there's the circus, I believe, and then if we all go back, this is the Victory Square with the eternal flame in Minsk. And if you want to see actually this, you can go and watch one of my oldest vlogs on this channel. This map feels a bit more like a Stalingrad, although it does have some open areas as well, which hopefully are going to be useful for tank destroyers and light tanks. I haven't actually played this one on the test server yet. I haven't got lucky enough to be able to do so, but stay tuned to the channel. I'll give you a full rundown of it coming soon. There are also going to be changes to current maps. Glacier, with Wargaming being very ambiguous until I actually get on this map, saying it's a more balanced fight. Okay, Siegfried Line is also seeing changes. Mines, Province, Pilsen, this is a map that's coming back, and it's actually pretty excited. Lots of you will remember this was removed a couple of patches ago. Wargaming have really opened it up. They've spread the buildings out, especially towards the west of this map, creating far more kill zones, and as we can see, the map size has been increased, as I mentioned several months ago on the channel. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this might be the most exciting feature of the 1.1 patch for you. If you don't care about new maps or personal missions, how can you not care about Polish tanks? Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. While I am going to do a full detailed review of this tech tree, just let me give you my little bit of an overview here. We've got the 4TP. Looks like a tier 1 tank that hardly anyone's going to really give a darn about. The 7TP, you're kind of the same thing. Not really a very interesting tier 2 vehicle. Not really selling it here, am I? 10TP, yep, more of the same thing. Although, what is that on the front? That reminds me of the Sentinel. Remember that Australian tank, I believe, that went into the game a few years ago. The 14 TP, more of the same, and then you finally reach the medium tanks towards tier 5. This is the 25 TP, which is actually quite mobile. It doesn't really have any armor, but it does have 10 degrees of gun depression and a reasonably okay gun for a tier 5 vehicle, which does make it look like this is where the tech tree might start to be reasonably interesting. Tier 6, this is very similar to the tier 6 Swedish tank. Sorry, no, not Swedish. Italian tank that went into the game recently because it's got a 90mm gun with 240 alpha. Looks like a very generic tier 6 medium, just a harder hitting kind of variant of the Cromwell that does have some decent frontal armor. It's kind of a medium pretending to be a heavy, this one. Then you're up to the 45 TB, which is the first heavy along the line, and this thing feels as if it's going to be a T29 that just doesn't have the OP turret, but it is packing a fairly competitive gun for a tier 7 tank. A lot like the gun on the T29, albeit with less powerful premium rounds and slightly less penetration on its standard rounds. Now jumping up to tier 8, this is going to be a tier where a lot of you get excited about, the 53 TP. My initial impressions of this tank is that it kind of feels like a 110 meets a VK4502A. It does pack 420 alpha with okay penetration. And the hull armor does work if you use the 8 degrees of gun depression that the vehicle has, but I think it'll be vulnerable if you don't, and it's a very tall tank. It's a gigantic profile and hard to hide behind. And of course, you've got a bit of a cupola on top of the tank to look forward to. Now, up to tier 9, and this is where things are getting a bit confusing. This vehicle is the 50 TP, and a lot of you might be thinking, hold on, QuickyBaby, didn't you just feature the 50 TP on the channel on Tuesday? Yeah, that was a tier 8 Polish premium heavy. It's called the 50 TP prototype or prototype, whatever you want to be calling it. So make sure you do stress that that is the prototype, because this is the real 50 TP at tier 9. And it kind of reminds me of kind of like an ST1 in a little bit of a way with regards to the turret. Sitting very tall, it looks like it has a horrific lower plate, but it has 8 degrees of gun depression and this monster gun. Look at this. 303mm of premium pen, 250. Regular pen, 3.75 rounds a minute. Oh, not the best accuracy and aim time, but 560 alpha. Just to put things into perspective, here is the gun on the IS-7. Yeah, it's just really not that much worse than the IS-7's gun, even though you're dropping down to tier 9, which does make it look like the 50 TP is going to be a vehicle that you do have to pay attention to in the next update of World of Tanks. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, let me present you the king of the Polish tech tree. It is the 60 TP. And this vehicle does look a lot like an ST1. Kind of meets an Object 705A. Apart from the turret is not at the back of the tank, it's at the front, which can be beneficial, but it does make it much worse when you're side scraping than the Soviet tier 10. The turret does feel fairly robust, the hull armor feels good. The lower plate looks like it's well angled, although I've been able to pen it easily all day long. The upper plate, much thicker, bit of a driver's hatch you're going to have to watch out for, but the highlight of this tank is the alpha, and that's pretty much the highlight of the entire Polish tech tree, because it's packing 750, the same as the E100, and while its premium rounds aren't quite as good, it's actually got slightly more penetration on its standard rounds, and its accuracy is okay, and its aim time is good as well. This vehicle, it just feels as if it's kind of a modern age E100, and while I feel the E100 is still going to be the daddy of when you just want to play like a Muppet and those tier 8 and tier 9 tanks don't stand a chance to you, I think this is going to be more of the thinking man's E100 who wants to hide that lower plate, who wants to use the 8 degrees of gun depression, who wants to use the better turret armor, at least against premium rounds. And we'll just have to see what Wargaming have to plan with this undoubtedly super heavy tank in the upcoming iterations of the test server. So while I'm sure there's a few other things Wargaming are changing, oh yeah, for example, Province is no longer going to be a tier 10 map in the next patch. At least for now, it's planned tier 7 and below. Hopefully you enjoyed this overview of the main content features coming in 1.1. And if you did, make sure you give the video a like, but if you absolutely hated it, make sure you give it a thumbs down. And as I mentioned, stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, whatever you've got to do, because I've got lots of content to flesh out this preview of 1.1, which looks like the mega content patch coming over the days and weeks. And so, as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.